I'm pretty much effed. That's my considered opinion. Effed. Those are the first 3 lines to the scientific novel The Martian by Andy Weir. I chose those lines specifically to begin with because that is the exact moment I got hooked. After reading those 3 lines, I knew I was in for a good book. Honestly, that quote also represents one of the reasons I love The Martian. It's straightforward and honest. This book holds nothing back and is hilarious. As you might have noticed from the quote, the book has no filter, where it never holds back when it comes to making hilarious, satirical adult humor. Another reason I love this novel is because of Ware's ability to perfectly describe the scientific terminology. What I mean by this is that this book is jam-packed with scientific mumbo-jumbo. Every other page there's some scientific thing happening that Ware explains. From a glance, the book looks horrifying. It looks extremely boring with a multitude of random science it contains. What makes me love it, though, is how Ware is able to take all the science mumbo-jumbo and make it understandable and, dare I say it, fun to read. He perfectly balances fact and humor while explaining the science behind everything. Ware first explains it scientifically and then dumbs it down for people like me to make it simple and hilarious with one-sentence explanations. Like when Mark Watney, the main character, spends a page describing all his issues in the beginning of the book. He simply states in the end, "So I have 2 problems. Not enough dirt and nothing edible to plant it with." At this point, I realize many of you have no idea about the book I'm talking to you. Again, the book is The Martian by Andy Weir. The book, The Martian, is a novel about a botanist and engineer named Mark Watney. Watney is the botanist on the Ares 3 mission crew. Ares 3 is a NASA mission designed to send astronauts to Mars. Anyways, Watney and the rest of his crew, Johansson, Vogel, Beck, Martinez, and Commander Lewis, are on the 6th day of their mission when a disastrous dust storm begins to approach. The storm is so bad that their MAV, their spaceship, is about to tip over. Commander Lewis decides to call for a complete evacuation. As the astronauts head from their hub to the MAV, the communications dish breaks off and hits Watney straight in the face. The others try to search for his body, but the storm is so bad they have to leave. The rest of his team leaves, and the entire world presumes Watney is dead. But what actually happens is that the dish impaled Watney in a perfect place so that there was no leaks in his suit. All he got was stabbed. So he basically survived. That was just the exposition. The story really begins here. The novel follows Watney's epic crusade and attempt to survive on Mars until he can be rescued. He is alone, has no way of communicating with NASA, and the next Mars mission won't arrive for 4 years. The rising action consists of him gathering his resources, attempting to farm potatoes, successfully farming potatoes, finding the Pathfinder to communicate with Earth. The story also takes place on Earth, however, from the viewpoint of many different NASA executives and scientists trying to work and get Watney home. The rising action on this side of the story consists with them learning about Watney's survival, communicating with him, and then beginning to set up an emergency supply probe for him. Small climaxes in the story include the supply probe exploding on takeoff, one of the airlocks of the HAB blowing up and killing all of Watney's corpses. Another turning point is when the Ares crew decides to turn around and save Watney. The biggest climax in the story, however, is when Watney leaves Mars on the MOV spaceship for the Ares 4 mission and is attempting to meet up with the Ares 3 crew on his ship, the Hermes. The resolution happens next and deals with the result of the launch. The suspense was very high since the scientists on Earth had to modify the MOV to allow Watney to be able to launch. Now, Watney is the protagonist and is a very round character, but he is also static. We learn much about him through the story. Even though he goes through such a perilous experience, he remains the same throughout the novel. He always uses humor to cope with pain. He never blames Lewis and the rest of his team. Also, throughout the entire story, he never has a filter. My favorite character, however, was Martinez, another member of Ares 3 mission crew. Martinez is another hilariously fun character, similar to Watney, and uses a lot of adult humor to ease tension. Martinez, along with the other members of the crew, can also be considered round yet static characters. I say this because we learn all about their past and we know their motivations. For example, in the story we learn about Martinez and Lewis's military past, and we learn that Vogel is a German man, and we learn all about his kids. They're static, though, because their views don't change throughout the story. They stick to their morals and they stick to their guts. This can be seen when the team unanimously decides to ignore NASA's orders and turn back to return to save Watney. Moving on to the setting, Mars is an integral part of the story. Most of the story takes place on Mars through Watney's perspective. The setting being Mars is super important to the plot of the story because it limits Watney's ability to complete tasks, since he constantly has to wear a suit to breathe. Also, when Watney makes his long journey to the Schiaparelli crater, the rugged terrain of Mars, all the hills and the craters, cause issues for Watney on his trip, like when his rover capsizes going downhill on an unsteady hill. On Earth, a minor setting would be China. When they use China's Tiantian booster, because China specifically provides the booster, China then becomes an integral part of the setting, because the NASA scientists have to go to China to be able to receive this booster. NASA's headquarters and overall of America see more of a backdrop. One big theme of the story is that it is human nature to help others. Watney even helps state this when he says, "Every human being has a basic instinct to help each other out." One thing about this book that made me really enjoy it was the scientific accuracy. According to the article How Accurate is the Martian? 9 Things the Movie Got Right by Jonathan O'Callaghan, most of the stuff Watney does to survive is actually possible. The author of this article states how even though the book was off about the dust storms and the Mars takeoffs, Ware was accurate about Watney being able to plant potatoes, the science behind Project Elrond, which was the project that enabled the Hermes crew to go around Earth and back to Mars, and Watney's ability to communicate through Pathfinder. Overall, the article rates the story with a 5-to-3 ratio of fact to fiction. This means that theoretically, it would be possible for a similar situation to happen in real life and a man to survive on Mars by himself. Now, the realness of the story is probably what made me love it the most, because as crazy as the story was with insane what if here, what if then, I couldn't help thinking, what if this actually happened? And so, will you, if you read The Martian by Andy Weir.